and party work, we'll probably have to squeeze one of the days for Link Center to seminar. So in that score, may I ask that you mute your mic if you are not speaking, please. That would help us a great deal because your background noise is interfering with the meeting. Welcome, Honorable Van Dam. If you can also mute your mic for now. So that's where we are.
I thought it was mute.
Yeah, it's thanks, Honorable Van Dam. So in that score, honorable members, that's how we are going to proceed with the meeting. The other rules, as you know, would apply, just to remind ourselves, especially with those that may be from outside of Parliament, is that because we are on a virtual platform and it may be difficult to control other things that would happen on the sites, please make sure that if you are not on the platform, you switch your video and your mic off or mute, whatever you call it, so that it doesn't really interfere with the meeting. We speak through the chair of the meeting. Is point of view. So this is what we're trying. So instead, the host muted me. So you should mute those that come in and speak without getting platform. So if we do that, I think our meeting will be smooth, like it's always been. But we'll allow members to engage freely on the matters that are before us. Of course, respecting their time. So without the waste of time, honorable members, as I said,
Chairperson.
I will then look at the applications for leave of absence. Yes.
Apologies, Chair.
Yes, that's what I'm talking to now. We have applications from, firstly, the minister who's attending an accountability session with Home Affairs Portfolio Committee. I think that relates to SETA matters. Then we also have an apology due to ill health from the Deputy Minister, Kekana. So those are formally the apologies that I have received on my side, unless I'm leaving anyone out, Hajira.
That's the only apologies, Chairperson. Okay.
So these are the apologies we have, but I can confirm that there is representation from the department. There is, I see on the platform, there is a representation from USAASA that would be able to listen to those concerns that OUTA would raise in the next presentation, so that they can also update their responses for the next meeting in that score. Having said that, I'm sure with regard to Sentech, they should be ready to present, but given that it's an entity that reports to the department, I'll check if there are opening remarks from the department to introduce the Sentech, and then allow Sentech in that score to present in the way they've arranged the presentation. But given that members would have received the presentation and went through it, we'll give maximum 15 minutes for that, so that the members can engage before we release Sentech. I check if the department would want to introduce the DG.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, honorable members, CEOs, executive caretaker. I see members of the public are here, and also members of OUTA that are here. Chair, we present to you Sentech, one of our entities. As you know, that Sentech is a signal distributor amongst others, and Sentech is currently one of the entities that is being earmarked for a repurposing and merger with BBI. Sentech is also, as you would know, in recent weeks has signed an agreement with USAASA to actually manage the set-top box that have been sitting at South African post offices. So in the last couple of years, you would know as honorable members that Sentech has been performing fairly well, but we need Sentech, if we're looking futuristically, that Sentech has to be ready for the future. And we present to you that Sentech must present itself as to how it goes about looking at its signal distribution cost structure, and as you've requested, and how it relates to especially its biggest client, which is the South African Broadcasting Corporation. Thank you, Chairperson. I wish the committee on its deliberation the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Acting DG. May we then hand over to Sentech to proceed.
Okay. Good morning, Chairperson, members of the Portfolio Committee, and all the attendees. My name is Malande Tonjeni. I am representing the board of Sentech. I am also representing the chairperson, Dr. Sandile Malinga of the board, who has sent his apologies. He's hosting an AGM at his workplace this morning and is unable to attend. With me today are the executives at Sentech, the CEO, Mr. Mlamli Boy, the COO, Mr. Tebucho Lishope, the CFO, Ms. Rudzani Rasikinia, and the company secretary, Ms. Selailo Matane. The CEO will be presenting on the signal distribution costs, and I'd like to hand over to the CEO to start the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Director. Honorable Chair and members, we thank you for the opportunity to come and submit our explanation and presentation to the committee as requested. As the Director Tonjeni has said, we have a team of executives who are going to be assisting me in delivering this presentation.
Sorry to disturb.
In
Chairperson.
the background noise, yes, Honorable.
No, sorry, I was going to talk about the background noise also. I think he has something else open. He must shut that. Thanks, Jess.
Thank you, Honorable Van Dam. I was also trying to, I thought it's me alone. I'm having that problem, but it would appear it's a problem for all of us. Look at probably even the other gadgets that may be open around you, because we get an echo sound coming back.
Apologies, Chairperson. I trust that the feedback has been eliminated. Can you please indicate if that is the case from your side?
Yeah, not on my side. There's still a background noise. I'm not sure if honorable members are hearing you clearly.
It's still there, Chairperson. The background noise is still there.
All
Yeah.
right.
You can work on that.
I'm just going to have to... Chairperson, are you able to hear me at the moment without the feedback noise?
Yeah, I think you can proceed from now. It's not bad now. Yeah, you can proceed.
Better. Thank you very much. Because you can maybe put it on slide. So thank you, members.
Yeah, Janet,
I think we're gonna have to separate the rooms. Yeah, please. Sorry, I think the challenge of feedback here, we're sitting in the same boardroom and we're trying
yeah,
to.
so yeah, that's why I was saying other countries are out. So
Yes. Okay, thank you. Maybe just go to the other slide, first slide, Tebuko. Yes, Chair, we have been requested, we'll try and be brief and concise on our presentation. We've been requested by the committee, I trust that all can hear me now, to present to you the signal distribution taxonomy, which is really the framework of our, or the structure of our tariffs for signal distribution, specifically relating to the SABC. So we've kept the document really sufficiently concise so that we can at least address the questions at a strategic and at the level that the committee would want to. So we'd like to just demonstrate to you how we have been managing our relationship with the SABC and maybe address some of the challenges which they have put in the public space about the Sentech signal distribution business and how it relates to their long-term financial sustainability. I would like to ask our COO to just drill down into the area of our tariffs and how it is structured, and then we will then take the question. I'll come back and conclude it, and then we'll take the questions thereafter. Thank you, Chairperson. Tebuko.
Yes. Good morning, Honorable Chair and committee members. Yes, we present to you the SABC costs with the main objective of reflecting on the current costs and also touch on some of the current initiatives that we have engaged on with the SABC to try and relieve the SABC from some of the financial challenges. We also, in this presentation, explore some of the future options that we have been engaging on with the SABC. We need to upfront say that this, the detail of this presentation has been shared with the SABC. It's a base of an ongoing conversation and engagement with the SABC.
Continue, Tebu.
Yes, Chair, this first slide, I try to reflect in terms of the scale and scope of services that Sentech is providing to the SABC. It's quite a huge scale, understanding the SABC's mandate and responsibility to inform and educate the public and citizens of South Africa. We have various platforms and various technology to actually enable the SABC as a key customer of Sentech and a public broadcaster to fulfill its mandate. So on the slide, we show the various platforms there, starting with the DTT, the digital terrestrial transmission. This is an evolution technology that has been adopted by many countries across the world. As you know, it's slightly behind time, but the value thereof is quite important to move the country into the future of media technology. The second platform is the direct-to-home. Direct-to-home, as you all may understand, is what is being received via satellite technology. You will need a dish to receive this on the DTT side. You will need an aerial. It's a much more cost-effective for the user option on the DTT side to receive media services. We then have the incumbent technologies, analog TV and analog radio. This is what the majority of the country is still reliant on, for particularly for radio. So we quite reliant on the analog services and halfway, maybe quarter way through migration into digital space there. We are starting with the digital radio technology, still fairly on a trial stage and established in Joburg and other parts of the country, mainly for trialing and ready to commercialize it very soon. We've also deployed for the SABC OTT and streaming platform, this to enable the SABC to move into the future of media evolution. So how we look at it, we positioned and develop platforms and solutions to really provide the SABC with universal digital platforms to enable the SABC to fulfill its public mandate. In the next slide, we try to reflect the extent of coverage of the SABC as provided by Sentech. Starting on the top right of the slide, we talk about analog television there. We have about 792 distribution points across the country to generate about 92% largely for the SABC across the country. Then the top right is the national radio coverage. Similarly, quite an extensive network with 769 distribution points. The future digital migration project and distribution points has 2 multiplexes, one for the SABC and community broadcasters and one for ETV and Mnet. It consists of 182 distribution points. And for the SABC, we also have 1 medium wave transmission point in the Eastern Cape. This is complemented by the direct to home and producing 100% coverage for the citizens of South Africa. With digital migration, I think the country made a decision to ensure every citizen of this country have access to information and media services. So in terms of the layer of the service, this is the extent of the SABC services and coverage across the country. You would have witnessed and experienced the service. You can, when you wake up in the morning, tune to your radio of choice and you're easily able to receive the service there. Now, this is just really a summary of what I've been presenting, saying this is the platform and the base of Sentech's enablement to the SABC mandate. And from our perspective, the SABC has the biggest media asset with 19 radio stations and 5 TV stations. From each of the distribution points, the SABC will average about 5 to 10 radios with 3 TVs, more or less. And then majority of South African relies on SABC services for information. And yes, we take this responsibility very serious. We manage this platform continuously and ensure that the SABC services are continuously available. We have various management centers across the country to ensure the fulfillment of this service. From our model perspective, as you may know, we are Schedule 3B. Of course, the main objective is to be self-sustainable. We observe the pillars of corporate sustainability from economic, bottom line, environmental, and social. And we're not expecting any bailout. We try to manage for sustainability so that we can fund our own operations on an ongoing basis. The main key customers are public broadcasters, commercial broadcasters, community broadcasters. We also have facility sharers and connectivity customers from a portfolio of customers from a Sentech perspective. We are a good corporate citizen as an organization. We manage our finances with efficiency and effective governance process. This has enabled us to achieve 8 consecutive clean audits, Chair and colleagues. We continue to honor the service levels with our customers. The set targets of 99.8 availability, we continue to deliver on that year to year. And we continue to consistently look at innovative ways of moving our customers into future technology and making the cost of delivery lesser. And these are some of the things really that our tariffs takes into consideration, Chair and colleagues. In the next slide, we present to you the signal distribution cost, looking at all services that we provide to the SABC. So we provide, as I highlighted earlier, the DTH public, and then there's DTT public, there's FM, there's medium wave, and then there's this analog TV. The combined cost to the SABC per month, it's 72 million, and per annum, it's 869 million. This is as a result of an extensive network that the SABC has and its responsibility as a public broadcaster. From a Sentech perspective, we're cognizant of the costs of the SABC, and on an annual basis, we proactively provide the SABC with a 2% discount on their tariff. This year, our board resolved to give the SABC an additional 3.7%, taking into consideration the current financial situation of the SABC. So the total discount given to the SABC this year is 5.7% share and portfolio committee members. There are other initiatives that we also offer in the SABC. During the lockdown and the crisis management, we provided the SABC a disaster recovery facility at the cost of Sentech. This was amounting to about 5 million, taking into consideration the importance of sustainability of the SABC for public interest and its mandate and the Sentech mandate. And we continue to explore alternatives of how we can further reduce the cost of the SABC, understanding the situation that SABC find itself in. We also gave the SABC a 3-month holiday payment amounting to 215 million. It's unfortunate the SABC defaulted on the arrangement, but we're trying to catch up on this arrangement. The next slide, we reflect the main cost drivers of the tariff of the SABC and really trying to reflect that the key drivers are technology management, satellite capacity, and energy. Energy is a key input, satellite is a key input. The technology and infrastructure is also very, very important. And then lastly, we have the human capital, the people that we need to manage this technology and ensure continuity of services there. So on the left, I have the cost contributors, and on the right, the percentage of each of those cost contributors. I'll focus on the significant one. Looking at the satellite capacity rental, it contributes about 27% of the overall cost of the tariff. Then we have energy, about 13%. And then we have the human capital cost, that's about 37%. The rest are less than 10%. Quite critical, the maintenance. You have to manage the platform and service it to ensure it is available tomorrow and able to carry the services forward. So one of the emerging cost contributor is security. The vulnerability of the assets there needs to be lowered. So we are also starting to incur asset security costs as a result. And then, Chair, we also look at what can be done going forward. And we looked at the technology efficiency for both technical and financial brought by the digital migration process, and put it side by side in exploring the options of going forward. So in this slide, we try to reflect what the digital migration process brings about from a financial efficiency perspective. So if you look at the overall, what we're saying here, once we migrate or conclude analog switch off, immediately the SABC realized 27% savings on an annual basis. It's a lot of money. It's about 130 million rand that can go back into the SABC's P&L. It can be redirected to either content or whichever needy part of the SABC for further sustainability by the SABC. So really here, the key message is the sooner we get to analog switch off, the better it is for the situation that the SABC find itself in. And we're working very closely with the SABC to collaborate and find the soonest methodology to get to that point, as it will give back the SABC financial relief there. There are also some alternatives. The SABC has engaged us with other alternatives, satellite, DTH, which we say, yes, maybe it's something that we can engage on, but we do not see it as a viable option in the immediate term. We believe that, yes, medium to long term, it could be explored. We could maximize responsibly so as the public entities to still make sure that we maintain the public services there, the mobility and agility that is required by this design, the information and technology sovereignty that is provided by the technology that we have outlaid already, the fulfillment of the long-term strategy of ensuring that we are purely sovereign from a technology perspective and not reliant on external country and party providers there. We also just included here our tariff design methodology, which is internationally benchmarked. What we do, we take the base of our assets and the cost of building the service, and we add a small margin with the pass-through cost, and that's what becomes a tariff towards the SABC. Be aware, of course, the legacy cost, the existing infrastructure, which is extensive and requires to be maintained going forward. You know what the extent of the tower and the lay of them are. They normally placed right on top of the mountain. So maintaining the infrastructure itself, the buildings, the towers, the roads that goes up there, does require a little bit of financial spend on them. So we took then the historic cost, reevaluated those, added depreciation. We took the primary cost, the direct cost, and the human capital there, and other direct costs and overheads to really derive the tariff. That's what becomes the Sentech revenue and a tariff to the SABC. The energy cost and the satellite cost, they mostly, the other costs, we realize that we cannot make margins on them, so we therefore formulate them as pass-through costs towards the SABC. Yes, in conclusion, Chairperson, we really just trying to reflect what the biggest cost drivers are, being satellite and human capital. And for us to be successful, we really need to ensure that those costs are recovered, and to ensure that the SABC's vast geographic terrain remains covered there. We've been aware of the SABC's plea. We're engaging with them in terms of future alternatives, and we're working on those. And we continue to find also further alternatives in terms of what can be done to further lower the SABC cost there. But for us to remain sustainable, really we need to recover our cost from our customers. I think there's a key message we're trying to reflect on this slide. We remain committed, Chairperson, to serve the public and the SABC with reliable services. We remain committed, Chair, honorable members, to evolve the SABC and the technology for South African media aspects to really place the country in the front of technology use and lead in terms of adoption of the latest technology there. We thank you very much, and we will engage in questions.
Thank you.
Honorable members, I think I do want to, as a last word from Sentech, to emphasize our commitment to universal access to media content. Our extensive network that we have built over the years is targeting at making sure that each and every person in each and every village and township and suburb of this country can access to public service content. So we are committed to support the SABC in delivering on its public mandate, and we will continue to do so and to engage with them. But I do want to emphasize that we are a Schedule 3B, and therefore we need to be sustainable. We don't have the luxury of going to Treasury to ask for bailout, and therefore we must make sure that we manage our finances responsibly. Thank you for the opportunity to present our case, and we shall pause and take questions. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, CEO. May I then invite members to engage? Question from Sentech. If I can
Honorable Van Dam, Chair.
just check. Yeah, I see there are also hands. I note you, Honorable Van Dam. I see there are also hands that are on the system. Just help me, Ajira, also on your side. If
Mr.
I do
Mackenzie,
not see the
Chairperson.
names, I do see Honorable Mackenzie's hand. As I said, unless I'm leaving you, honorable members, please indicate if your hand is up and you are not noted.
Ms. Falco, Chairperson.
No, I've seen that hand before. Honorable Faku, Honorable Van Dam, Honorable Mackenzie, Honorable, is it Mtembu? Honorable Mtembu, can you hear? It's follow on
Yes,
Honorable
thank you.
So can we then take those hands for now, and then other members may still want to come in if need be. Honorable Faku, followed by Honorable Van Dam, Honorable Mackenzie, then we have Honorable Mtembu, in that order.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. First, let us appreciate the presentation that we have received. Chair, my apologies, my network is very bad. My camera will be off. Chair, let us appreciate the presentation from Sentech. I think we need to appreciate the good work that Sentech has been doing. I think they are one entity that is performing very well. And I think as a committee, we've been consistent to say that we really appreciate the effort that Sentech is doing. Let us appreciate the effort that Sentech has taken to be able to negotiate with the SABC. I think that is very important, as the CEO has indicated. I think as a committee, let us appreciate that negotiation, because SABC has been crying about the high tariffs that they are currently paying to
Lost Honorable Faku. Honorable
Okay,
Faku.
I'm back. Hey, I lost.
Okay, yes.
Chair, can you hear me?
Yeah, we
So
can
I
hear
think
you
let
now.
us appreciate. Okay, I think let us appreciate the work that Sentech is doing, Chair, but also appreciate the effort that Sentech has taken to be able to sit down with the SABC and look at ways on how they can work together, but also try and reduce cost. But in doing so, I hope, CEO, that at the end of the day, you would not sacrifice Sentech in the process, because we want you to be sustainable as well as you are to assist the SABC. I think that's appreciated, that effort that you made. I'm a bit worried, perhaps with us. SABC is trying to move away from DTT, which for me is kind of a concern. Can you tell us, do we have capacity as a country if SABC goes to the route of DTH? Because for me, I think in terms of the policy directive, DTT is what is the way to go. And I think that I've went through a workshop that was offered by WITS, and WITS was very clear on DTT when we're part of that. Do you think we have capacity in terms of satellites that if SABC would go that route of leaving DTT and go that route, but also if SABC ever thinks that maybe they want to leave Sentech and join, because they are saying that their service providers who can offer much cheaper cost than what you are currently offering. But let us appreciate, but also part of your presentation at the bottom, at the conclusion, as you are saying that I just want to understand in terms of the cost that or the debt that SABC is currently owing you guys, Sentech, what is the process? Have you negotiated in terms of how will they pay? Because you are saying that they have not paid you for quite some time. What is the process with regards to that? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Faku. Honorable Van Dam, I hope you can hear.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just feeling a little bit unwell today, so I'll keep my camera off if you don't mind. So my question to Sentech is as follows. So what percentage of your revenue comes from the SABC? And the SABC said to us, they either need you, sorry, let me just find the numbers. I had the presentation open from last week. Apologies, Chair, I just want to speak to what they said directly. They said that they needed you to reduce the costs to 500 million. Is that a possibility? And is there a legal obligation for the SABC to use your services? So those are the questions I want to know. How much are you dependent on the SABC? What percentage are you dependent on from the SABC? Is the SABC legally obligated to use Sentech's services? And then obviously I would like to congratulate you for how well you run Sentech. 8 consecutive clean audits is not something you come across quite often in government SOEs. So that is indication of an entity that is very, very well managed. And it's very good to see. But this issue with the SABC, I think we need the SABC to survive, you know, because it plays a very, very big and important role in our democracy, in terms of public education, in terms of providing entertainment to people who cannot afford streaming or DSTV. So yeah, just those 2 questions. Thanks, Chair.
We now go to Honorable Mackenzie, who will be followed by Honorable Tim.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you, colleagues. Good morning, everybody, and good morning, Mr. Boyce specifically, and Mr. Leshop. It's very nice to see you. Thank you very much for the presentation from both of you. I must echo what my colleague Honorable Van Dam said. In all the time I've sat in this committee, whenever Sentech has come before the committee to present your APPs or your financial reports, it's always been an absolute pleasure to deal with a government entity that not only maintains their clean audits, but you can see the entity is cohesive, it is targeted, it is focused, and it is well run. And that's testimony, I think, to the caliber of the board and the caliber of the management and the people you employ. So I'd also like to echo my colleagues' congratulations in that regard. In terms of the merger with BBI, you know, BBI's biggest problem whenever they've come before the committee has been a lack of capital. They've always had a problem being adequately resourced in terms of financing. Now, we know that one of the things that particularly impressed me as an ex-financial man about Sentech was that all your borrowings were internal. You didn't go outside to look for funding. So you maintained an excellent distribution network. You invested in new infrastructure, and all of your, as far as I understand it, all of these programs were funded internally. So you know, that's an incredible track record to boast of. given the capital requirements you need in your business to maintain the excellence that you're renowned for, with the BBI merger, firstly, can you tell me when you anticipate that happening? And what is the impact do you think that is going to have on the capital requirements for Sentech BBI, the new company? Is that going to affect you negatively or positively? And have you done any modeling on that score? Then secondly, congratulations again, Mr. Boy, for not approaching government in this very difficult time for a bailout. And I think that's what Sentech is known for. And I'm really proud of you guys, man, in the middle of this crisis. Can you tell me, in terms of revenue percentages, just to build on what my colleague Honorable Van Dam was saying, she asked for a revenue split between the SABC and others. Can you tell me what percentage of your revenue is derived from community media? How are community media paying previously compared to this time of crisis during COVID national lockdown? Has this affected your collections from community media? And have you taken any steps to assist community media during this very difficult time? I asked this question bearing in mind that you haven't approached government for any funding. So, you know, whatever answer you give is great. Then the SABC has arrived before the committee, and we understand the essential nature of the SABC. And pointed, obviously looking to cut costs across the board, and has pointed to Sentech as a major cost inhibitor on the organization, on the SABC and their return to profitability and sustainability. Do you think the answer to the rather high, the enormous amount of money you charge the SABC, do you think the answer to that is the switch off of analog? Because from what I saw on the slide presentations, it looks as if that's going to make a huge difference to the money paid by SABC to Sentech. If you can just provide clarity on that. And then in terms of your tariff model, it looks eminently sensible to me. If I was running your business, I would want that kind of model and just pass on your costs. Can you tell me what, and I don't want to put you in a compromised position here. So if this information is confidential, you can give it to the committee in writing. But could you just give me an idea of what your margin is, please, in terms of that tariff model you apply? That's it. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable McKenzie. I will now take Honorable Mtembu.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Greetings to you. Please, Chair, allow me not to open my camera due to a poor network. I was covered by the previous speakers, but I just want to applaud Sentech for enjoying 8 consecutive clean audits. That's not something we cannot appreciate. It is something amazing. I wish other departments are doing the same. Thank you so much, Chair.
Am I leaving any other member?
Yeah, Chair.
Honorable Mlala, yeah, so that I don't see your hand in the system, that's why I want to check if I'm leaving any member. You can come in, Honorable Mlala.
Yeah, thanks.
So Honorable Pambo has convinced you otherwise. Okay, it's fine, proceed, Honorable Mlala.
And it's very quiet, Pambo. I don't know why. He must raise his hand. I want to hear him. Thanks, Chair. I must first also join my colleagues to congratulate Sentech. I think you guys are doing well. Where I'm sitting, I'm a bit worried that you're doing well, and others are saying no, but you're overcharging them. So we need to balance the two because you need to continue doing well and also look at how best we can assist. But I just want to do a follow-up on the one issue that was raised by Honorable Van Dam, that SABC want you guys to reduce cost by 500 million. If you could indicate what that 500 million means to your income, your 800 million that you said over a period of a year. What does that 500 million mean? And I also wanted the department to also, because it looks like the department is mediating in your dispute, is becoming CCMA. So I would also want the department to comment whether this concern of the SABC is reasonable or rational in their view, because you guys are engaged in close meetings. The other issue that I also need to make a follow-up on is that the SABC is also threatening to leave you guys for the cheaper services. Now, the question I want to ask you is, who are those cheaper service providers that are out there? Are they private? And what are the implications of this move in terms of security of the network? Because we can't then privatize everything, including information. We just need to know what are the implications. If they decide, because their board has got powers, they can decide. Now, if either the department or Sentech can give us an indication that what are the implications of SABC moving out of Sentech, because they are threatening that they will do that. From where I'm sitting, it will be bizarre, but I'm not in the board of the SABC. It will be bizarre for SABC as a government entity to move away from another government entity and opt for private on matters that has got implications on security of the network. And so I just need both network and information, because the information that SABC is providing, it's South African information. Now, we can't have all our information just being spread all over the world without knowing which one is relevant and so on. So those are my few questions, and then I'll come back maybe after the response. Thanks, Chair.
Honorable Mlala, I will now take Honorable Kubeka. I see a hand is up in the system. Honorable Kubeka.
Thank you very much, Chair. And also let me greet all members, the delegation from the Sentech, and also delegation from the department. And also, Chair, let me join the queue to appreciate and thank the Sentech, because it shows the commitment that is it in on the issue of getting 8 successful clean audit. This is not a child's play. And indeed, it will tells you to say they are doing their work with passion, Chair. And also let me thank, because I can hear they are having a pride of saying it's a priority to them on the side of their clients when coming to the issue of relations, and also on the side of the services, Chair. But I think other members have tried to cover me. But I want just to hear, Chair, on the side of the Sentech, hence they have tried also to make some means and some moves on the side of trying to cover the SABC. As they are saying, they have managed during the lockdown time, try to give the SABC that 3 months holiday certificate, and also by saying they were prepared also to go to up to the amount of 250 million, just to make a discount on that side of the SABC. But as other members are concerned to say, is it possible indeed on the side of the Sentech, as SABC is raising to say, can they be up to that 500 million? Is it possible on their side to be in this manner of saying they will manage even to work as they are usually working, when they can agree to give the SABC that discount of that amount? And also let me support on the side of saying, I think on the side of the DTT, on our side, it's a priority, Chair, and we are supporting because as Honorable Faku was raising to say, it seems as if it's not only South Africa on the side of the DTT. All the African countries were prioritizing actually to use this the issue of DTT. So is it possible, as SABC was saying, they can also move or try to focus especially on the side of the DTH instead of this one of DTT? So let's think indeed to say Sentech is committed, as it raised sharply, so to say, it is not prepared even at a certain stage where it will go to the treasury for the issue of the bailout. Let them just keep like that, continue, but I think it can be much more better if even in other entities that we are having in our department, just some advices in order that even those entities, they can push just like Sentech. Thanks, Chair.
Kubeka. I will now, I would allow Sentech to respond, as well as I think there was a question from Honorable Mlala with regard to the department, if the department would want to respond to that now. But Sentech, as you respond, just on the part that relates to satellite, if you can also give the committee a sense, other than the SABC, what other broadcasters are using. Are they on satellite? If not, what could be the reasoning behind that? And if they are there, will that mean that indeed what the SABC raises on its side then becomes a valid point that you would look for something that's cheaper in that scope? So that's, as you respond, if you can also just give us a sense in terms of your other clients, what's happening with them in that regard. The second point, just to again take the point about DTT to another level, that in your presentation, you are indicating that the switch off of analog to DTT would yield a 27% cost reduction on the side of the SABC. Maybe if you can also elaborate that point so that we know whether SABC is also paying for such dual illumination, or if not, then how is the 27% cost reduction going to be effected? I think that's for me important as the committee seeks to engage the SABC matter, to engage from factual information in that regard. Otherwise, the other points have been raised by members. I'm not sure if the department wants to come in first or give to Sentech first. I think DG.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Honorable Mulala, for that question. Yes, perhaps the question that has been raised has to be understood in the context of where the SABC finds itself at this particular point, wherein that we've noted with the SABC presentation last week that SABC finds itself with a very low average revenue per user, as it has been reported, even with their figures that they have shown. And they're looking at alternatives in terms of their transmission costs. And in this respect, you would note that the Deputy Minister reported at the last week's meeting that she has set up a structure wherein SABC and Sentech are required to do an audit of the transmitters and actually to ensure that both parties receive the best or the best value, because you will realize, Honorable Mulala, that SABC, for instance, when I'm talking about average revenue per user, they still have the same transmitters, but they are not realizing the same revenue as you would have said, let's say maybe 15 years ago, but the transmitters are still the same. Then even when it came to the deployment of DTT, the deployment of DTT presumed that there was going to be growth in terms of they presumed, it actually mirrored the transmitters of the SABC, whereas the SABC revenue did not grow at the same level as the cost of having a transmitter. So you have that that challenge as the SABC. So I would ask the committee to, through the chair, allow that process to unfold, and then once it's done, we come back with being led by the deputy minister and say, this is the result of that process. This is the transmitters that the SABC is going to offload, or this is the price that is going to be reduced, if that's the possibility. So that's what I would suggest as a possibility, that we allow that process to unfold. Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you for now. You're welcome.
Sentech.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. We do want to appreciate the comments and encouraging words from the members of the committee. It is a tough world out there, and we are trying, with the help of the shareholder, with the also commitment of our customers, to deliver the service to this nation. And I do want to emphasize the fact that SABC is a very important customer of Sentech, and we are bound by contractual agreements between ourselves, that is Sentech and the SABC. And so we do appreciate the business that SABC has been graciously able to give us as Sentech to provide them with the service of signal distribution. So we'll take the questions, Chairperson, as they came. First of all, there was a question around the debt of the SABC. I will ask the CFO to speak to the debt question, and then we'll go step by step. Thank you, Chair.
Good morning, everyone. The debt, as at the end of September, was sitting at around just over 300. So SABC defaulted firstly on the payment holiday that was given to them. Further to that, they defaulted on the July invoice. Since then, we've been in engagement with them, and they've identified that they can only pay us, they first said they will only be able to pay us 50 million rand a year. And we indicated to them that will not be able to cover all our costs, and therefore we will not be able to accept that, because it doesn't even cover the monthly invoices of 72 million. Then they came back and they indicated that they will only be able to pay 60 million. And then we then said to them they need to go back because that also does not cover the monthly invoices. At least if they are covering the monthly invoices, and we talk about the debt arrangement over a period, and we were willing, we've given them a payment plan where we didn't want to go beyond the 31st of March, because that's our year end. And if you've got a huge debt in your books, that complicates the
the finances or the financial statements that we will submit to the auditors for audit. So we are at that stage where they've indicated the 60 million, and we've gone back to them that at least if they can cover the entire monthly invoices, and we talk about the debt going forward. And that's where we are. At the end of October, end of September, they settled the September invoice, but they also paid an additional amount of around 20 million, which then offset the debt. So that's the only amount that they have paid towards the debt so far. So we are in constant engagement with them in terms of how we can assist them. Thank you.
Chairperson, we definitely have no doubt that SABC is committed to honor their financial obligations, and we do want to indicate that we appreciate the financial difficulties which the management of the SABC is facing, and we are not unsympathetic to that. I think we've demonstrated that commitment by being relatively flexible, because we're dealing with a public broadcaster and we belong to the same shareholder, but we don't want it to be misinterpreted as if we are ignoring our contractual obligation between ourselves and the SABC. There was a question asked by Honorable Van Dam on what is the revenue, what is the business of that we actually giving or getting from the SABC. Let me put it that way. Before I give you the percentage, let me give the context. I think the COO Table Coalition has indicated the extent to which the SABC is a dominant player in the electronic media space, with those assets which they own, the whole 19 radio stations and 4 or 5 television stations, which they have an obligation to cover the whole country. So that mandate then puts a burden on them, and obviously a demand on us to be able to deliver to the SABC the national coverage which they require. As a result of that, the revenue from the SABC or the business of the SABC is just over 60%. So if you look at it, it's a 60-40, SABC 60 plus, and other entities account for 40% plus minus business revenue to Sentech. If they are aiming to reduce that business by 500 million, is this something that is achievable? We do think that it is a process that has to be undergone by SABC and shareholder, and it also will have to speak to issues of what network or services are they planning to maybe to terminate, if you will. But it is an issue that we're still discussing with the SABC, and I do want to also indicate, Chair, that we're dealing with our customer here, so we want to be sensitive on the information we're sharing with the committee without ignoring the fact that this is Parliament. We must account transparently. So the issue of 500 million is really going to be very, in fact, we can't achieve it immediately. That we can tell you right away. It is impossible. But it is a journey that we can traverse together with the SABC, and to see how close can we get to that over the years. And what binds them to us, apart from the contractual agreement for us to deliver signal attribution content, I think they have a license from ICASA which indicates who the signal distributor is, and also I think there is a policy requirement on them to use the services of Sentech, but I think that one I'm subject to correction by the department. So there was another question that was raised by Honorable Faku, saying that how do we then deal with the fact that SABC wants to move away from Sentech, and is there capacity on satellite that will allow them to move away from Sentech? from a television perspective. And then I think it's very important for us to know that, we, first of all, we don't own satellite, and therefore the capacity available on the hotbed that is being used by the other broadcasters on this part of the world. As far as we have been informed by our supplier of the satellite capacity, there is no spare transponder that is available for anyone who wants to go to satellite on the same satellite which we are currently using, which would make sense because you don't want to put your content on a different satellite, because then people will have to repoint their antennas, and that becomes very difficult to achieve, and it can disrupt the SABC's customers, viewers. But we don't know the details. I'm sure the members can ask the SABC as to which satellite user would they go to if should they want to move to satellite and away from Sentech. As far as we are aware, and then we know enough in the satellite space to say categorically that in the capacity available on satellite, there is not sufficient or spare capacity that SABC can maybe use immediately, unless if they maybe contract a satellite company to launch another satellite onto the same orbital location, so that they can be able to use that capacity and not disrupt their viewers. Question raised by Honorable Mackenzie briefly. When is the measure of BBI and Sentech? I will park that Chairperson and ask the DG to answer that question, because it is driven by the department, and we are participants and affected parties in as far as that is concerned. Have we modeled this? It is work in progress between the BBI, Broadband Infraco Sentech, and the department, where we're looking at how this measure would work, but I would prefer to leave it to the main driver of that project, which is the DG's office at the DCDT. You asked the question, Honorable Mackenzie, about the community broadcasting services. What did we do during the lockdown and difficult times? I think, as it happened to most of our customers who asked us for a reprieve or a payment holiday or deferred payment, the CRBs were amongst those who, community broadcasters were amongst those who asked us for a payment holiday, which we granted. But I have to say it here on the public record that we've struggled over the years to get revenue from the community broadcasters. Currently, the debt of the community broadcasters sits above 60 million, and we're battling to get the community broadcasters to pay their debt. But that is a process that is being handled by the department and all those who are supporting the community broadcasters. The issue of switching off analog, is that the answer? Yes, we have indicated in our presentation that it will give the SABC at least a significant benefit in terms of the cost effectiveness of signal distribution. So they will save over 120 million when we switch off analog. So the sooner we do this, the better. And who pays? I mean, are they paying for the dual illumination? I think the members asked that question as well. No, there is no broadcaster who's paying for dual illumination. This cost is covered by the fiscus. It's an allocation that is paid for by the fiscus, and that's the only allocation that we receive from government for covering that cost until such time that we switch off analog. So if we do, when we do switch off, it will be a great saving to the fiscus and also a great savings to the SABC, and therefore would like to encourage members to keep us accountable in terms of when is this switch off going to happen. And Honorable Mackenzie, I would like to leave the question of margins as a confidential information. Suffice to say that we are a public entity and our margins are really pedestrian. We don't charge high margins, but we can supply that information to the committee in writing. I think there was a question asked about by Honorable Mulala. I think I've answered the 500 million rands question. If SABC was to terminate 500 million rands now, say whatever happens, SABC, Sentech, we want to cut 500 million, it would have huge implications to the business of Sentech. In fact, it would be very detrimental to the long-term survival of Sentech as an organization. You asked a question, I'll ask the COO to come in there, but you asked a question around the who are these competing operators which the SABC is claiming that they would go to get a cheaper signal distribution service and so on. Unfortunately, I couldn't answer that because, and I'm sure that's confidential information to the SABC. We don't have that information. I'm sorry, Honorable Mulala, I can't answer that. But I just asked the COO Debuko to come into the issue of the implications of that reduction of 500 million and other signal distribution questions. Thanks, Debuko.
Thank you. Thank you, Mlamli. Yes, Honorable Chair, committee members. Yes, I think the engagement we've been having with the SABC in terms of the models we can follow or adopt to reduce their costs, we're not coming close to 500 million. So there is a slight misalignment between the financial objective and the technical objectives and discussions that we have had. We're still working on this to see how best can we come closer to. But I think the general question from the committee is the viability of 500 million and its implication on Sentech. Yes, I think from where we're sitting, it is clear that the 500 million reduction cannot be achieved without reduction of services from the SABC side. It needs to be clear from our side that we will have to cut some services if this is going to be the way we are going to follow. And it will have implications on Sentech as an entity. We have invested about 2 billion rand on the asset bill for DTT migration. We have been incurring dual illumination costs. So we're talking roughly an investment of over 3 billion rand that is already sitting there. So there will then be impairment of that asset. It is not something that any investor or the government wishes to go through. There is a risk of job losses associated with that. You have legacy costs to manage. If you lose the revenue, then the legacy cost and the direct cost issues are exposed there. And we will also not wish to go through this, as it will be contrary to the objectives of the economic recovery and jobs creations, and not at this stage. And the model that is also being punted does push the cost to the public, to the viewer. It is cost effective to receive via DTT, as we all understand that the receiving via DTH, you need a dish, and then the maintenance and management and the failure or thereof is quite more frequent, and the cost will then be pushed to the viewer there. So it is also not something by design. We preferred a cost-effective technology that is also giving us some level of sovereignty. We are designing and we want to move the country towards a more fully technology sovereign country. Our initiatives of moving content contribution away from satellites to fiber to ensure that we are not reliant on external parties will be reversed if we move to satellites. So that needs to be noted. But our discussions and our view on this matter has been, cost reduction is not the only solution. I think we need to explore more alternatives. We cannot just revert to one. This is taking into consideration that the SABC has in the past been able to afford this. So we see that there is an opportunity and potential there. If the SABC could maybe focus on the top line growth, it could also be one contributing element there. We are not opposed to cost reduction, but we're saying let's do it responsibly. We'll engage with the SABC so that we do not affect the public service going out there. And the third element that we see is possible shareholder intervention. It's a process, of course, but we're looking at three things there that could possibly alleviate the SABC situation, being the shareholder intervention, cost reduction and optimization from Sentech, reasonably so, and some element of revenue growth from the SABC. So there are three things that we are looking at, which we will recommend that the balance thereof be considered as a means to drive sustainability for the SABC. Thank you.
Thank you. For the last question asked by the Honorable Chair on what other broadcasters are on satellite, I think we're all aware that we have in this country two operators, the subscription operator DSTV and also the OVHD, which is an ETV owned entity. So so those are other operators on the satellite space that we are aware of. But internationally, we know that countries like Spain and the UK are still on both platforms, on the DTT platform, and also, in fact, in Spain, DTT is big, migrated a while ago, no use of set-top boxes, but integrated TV sets. So we don't necessarily think that DTT is a dead technology, but we don't deny the fact that it is more costly than when you use satellite. That cost has been incurred already, and no revenue has been generated from that investment. And I'm sure government would want to recoup that investment, unless if then it's decided that we're writing off 1.8 to 2 billion rands, which is not desirable. Chair, I think we've covered the questions asked of us. Oh yes, I think there was a question around the 27 million achievement. We've covered that question. The 27% discount as a result of analog switch off. We've covered that question. It's going to. Sorry, Deborah, you want to add to that?
Yes.
Yeah. Please.
Further realizable from a DTT perspective. It is progressively, Chair, as and when we switch off analog. So the SABC is not paying for two networks. The dual illumination allocation takes care for that. They only pay for one network. It is either analog or digital. When we move them to digital, we charge them a digital tariff and we drop the analog tariff. So as and when they move to digital, for that particular distribution point, they will immediately realize 27% on that. And at the end of analog an analog switch off, then the SABC will recurringly year on year realize that benefit. So that is the model of that value gain. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. I will hand it back to you.
Ajera can intervene. The chairperson is missing.
Ms. Kubeka, could you just take the chair?
Can you hear me, Hajira?
I'm here, Ms. Kubeka. You can just move to the next presentation or check if there's any other questions from members.
Okay, thank you, Haji. Let us also thank the presentation of Sentech, and we can see the Sentech it's willing.
Yeah.
Hello. Yes, Honorable Mpambo.
No, Chair, I just maybe wanted to hear a little bit more, on the question around, SABC leaving, Sentech. Isn't SABC compelled to use Sentech DTT platforms, at least for 80% of its digital broadcasting coverage? And this perhaps maybe involves the ICASA. And this is, of course, in accordance with the DTT regulations. I just wanted to hear, because that did not come out at least clearly. It sounds as if SABC perhaps has has got the privilege to just get out of the contractual agreements outside of the sort of regulations and the compilation that may be through ICASA. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mpambo. Let me give also maybe back before I can give to Sentech. Can I just check, is there anyone also maybe who wants some clarity or wants to have another question, honorable members?
Honorable
Honorable Van Dam.
Honorable Van Dam.
Honorable Mackenzie.
Honorable Mackenzie. Okay. Can I give, before Sentech, can I give you honorable members just to ask, and then we will give Sentech when they are responding all the questions. Honorable Van Dam, over to you.
Also Gumbu, Chair.
Okay, Honorable Gumbu, noted.
Thanks, Chair. I think I asked a very simple question to Sentech, which was not answered. I do not consider this commercially sensitive information. I do not consider this information that would, impact Sentech's viability. I quite honestly do not see any reason at all that Sentech cannot tell us what percentage does the SABC contribute to your overall revenue. This is not secret information, so can you please give me an answer? As the chair always says, we are not here to fight with you or whatever. We are here to help you. But in order to help you, you need to help us to help you. So if you don't tell us how much your sustainability is reliant on the SABC and the exact figure, how do you expect us to help you? And here is a very cold, hard fact. And that's why you didn't answer this. There is no explicit legal obligation for the SABC to use your services, which means if there is a distributor out there that offers what you offer cheaper, they can go and do that. There is nothing that prevents them from doing so. The Broadcasting Act makes the SABC board the ones that make the final decisions. And in essence, no one can force them to continue to use Sentech beyond whenever your contract ends with them. And the cold hard truth is that you're going to have to be competitive in such a market. You're going to be able to have to be competitive. And if you're not competitive and your pricing is not competitive, and you, in the same way we always say to the SABC that you need to self-sustain, you need to reconsider your funding model. The same applies to you guys. Because if you lose the SABC as a client, which you can, they have the right to do so, to go out there to the markets and find something cheaper. You just have to be competitive, and you need to look at your business model, see what you can do, change your pricing. I don't know. Whatever it is, you must come and tell us what your turnaround strategy has to be. So I want to know, what is the percentage of the SABC's contribution to your bottom line? And your pricing, I believe, needs to also be something that goes goes through a bit of an ICASA regulatory process. And as I understand, there is no, what is this instruction will have to be something that's considered. Now, if SABC is forced, for example, I don't know what measure that would be.
Ajira, can you assist us on that side?
It's Mr. Gumbu, Chair.
Sorry,
it's Mr. Gumbu.
Gumbu. Can you mute him, please?
Hey, he's listening to some nice music, but not right now for us. Hi.
Tembinkosi, can you mute on that side?
John Vuligate.
Don't forget he's right in farms there.
I've muted him, Chair.
Thank you, Tembinkosi.
For December.
Continue, Honorable Pandam.
So yeah, I don't want to see a situation where you are taken to the Competition Commission or something like that. So tell me, what percentage is it? How are you going to change? Or maybe you haven't considered this, but it's something you must consider. Given that there is no explicit legal obligation, what are you going to do about your business model? The world is changing, and I believe for SOEs to continue to exist without every year going cap in hand for a bailout to self-sustain, we need to move with the times. It's the fourth industrial revolution, and you can't stick to the same business model that worked 10 years ago. You need to consider options. You need to sit around the table and think very clearly about what you're going to do going forward. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you, Honorable Van Dam. Honorable Mackenzie.
Thank you, Acting Chair, much appreciated. Just to the department, the Acting DG, Mr. Boy referred a question I asked, just in terms of when you anticipate the BBI merger taking place with Sentech, and if you have an opinion on how that will impact on the capital requirements of the new entity. Thank you very much. I mean, I know I asked some piercing questions, but sure.
Ms. Kubeka. Ms. Kubeka. Ms. Kubeka. Chair, are you on? I saw the chair join. Chair, can you hear us?
I think Chairperson is disconnected again, Hajira.
And Ms. Kubeka, I see her on, but can she hear us, Tembinkosi?
I think she's muted.
Ms. Kubeka, you've muted. Could you unmute, please?
No. Hajira?
We can hear you, Ms. Kubeka. Go ahead.
Okay. I was saying, can I give to Sentech and then the department will come after whilst the chairperson is not yet back? Is not yet back, ne?
Not yet, Ms. Kubeka.
Okay. Let me continue. Over to Sentech.
I wanted to ask a question. And
My humble apology, Honorable Gumbu. Your phone is the one who disturbed us. Can you come in before I can give to Sentech? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The SABC is saying that they can leave Sentech to look for other service providers, which will be cheaper, I understand. Now, I just want to check as to how this is going to impact Sentech as a whole. Because given the fact that if you check, you'll find that SABC is one of the biggest customers of Sentech. What impact is that going to have on Sentech? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Gumbu. Can I give Sentech? Then the department will come after.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I just want to maybe answer the question that was asked by Honorable Van Dam. Maybe I was not clear when I answered it initially. Honorable Van Dam, the SABC accounts for, to be precise, 65% of our business, all right, in terms of revenue. So it is quite a significant chunk of business that is the SABC's business on the books of Sentech. On the point of whether or not they are forced to use Sentech, we have a contractual agreement, so we are bound by a legal instrument. So that does not necessarily mean that they are forced to use Sentech, but I would leave that detailed answer maybe to the shareholder to drill deeper into what would be the implication from a policy perspective should the SABC decide to find another entity. Also, to give you comfort, we're forever sharpening our pencils in terms of being price competitive. We are a dominant player in this industry in terms of the signal distribution, simply because of the historic reasons. We've got a vast network that delivers terrestrially, and if maybe they have found an alternative supplier who can compete best and better with our pricing, I'm sure we will get to know about that. But we are constantly trying to improve our pricing so that at least SABC and other customers can be able to afford our services. And I think, Honorable Van Dam, you persuaded me to answer the question asked by Honorable Mackenzie on the margins, but I'll give you the range, because this is what we do to all our new businesses. When we take up the new business, our range of margin is anything between 12% and 20%. So it is not exorbitant at all. The question asked by Honorable Gumbu, yes, I think we did touch on it. The departure of SABC from Sentech, that would mean you cutting off 65% of our business, and that would mean that the shareholder must reduce the expectation of Sentech's business by that amount. But are we doing anything? I think this is an important question asked by Honorable Van Dam. Are we doing anything to be sustainable? Are we changing our business models? Yes, we are. We are working on different business models. Sentech is not a classic signal distributor anymore. Sentech is and has moved into broadband services as well. And this is where I think the measure of Sentech and BBI comes into play. So this entity, as we have it today, will have revenue streams which are not only signal distribution revenue, but other streams such as the broadband services, and also we lease our infrastructure to the industry. So we've got managed infrastructure services as a revenue. So, but that is small in comparison to what we receive from the SABC, simply because of the size of the SABC. So I trust that I have touched on the questions to the satisfaction of the members. It's 65%, Honorable Van Dam, and we are in negotiations with the SABC so that we can see how we can bundle the services, not to delay their progression and their migration to digital. So we're discussing about multi-platform situation where they can have streaming services, DTH, DTT, radio. So all those are strategies that we're exploring. I trust that my colleagues have touched on all the questions that have been asked. Thank you very much, honorable members.
The department pertaining the issue of moving, and I think on the side of Honorable Mbambo. Hello.
Hello, Mr. Becker.
Yes, yes, Jira.
You can proceed. I was just on the line with the chair. He's having problems, so he's going to try to listen in with him because his phone. While he was speaking, we were cut off here. So if that's the end of the presentation, Ms. Kopeka, we can proceed to the next one.
Okay. No, not yet finalized with this one of Sentech. Can also on the side of the department to respond to the question on the side of the policy, what will happen when SABC decides to move out at all on the side of the Sentech. That one we are still waiting for the department just to come in. But Honorable Mpambo was raising also on the side of the what will happen with the side of the regulations also to Sentech. That was the question on the side of Honorable Mpambo also, Chair. Honorable Mpambo?
I think I thought I had asked the question already.
Yes.
Yes, I've already asked it. Unless
yes, I was saying the Sentech must come in to respond to your question. Thank you.
Yes, Honorable Chair, thank you very much for the question from the Honorable Member there. Yes, from the obligations of the regulations, I think the 2012 DTT migration regulations requires the SABC at launch to at least cover 74% via terrestrial network. And at the end of digital migration, it stipulates 95%. So there definitely is a need for the SABC to engage the regulator if there's going to be a change in terms of the terrestrial use. I think that part maybe will be up to the regulator to state what the implication is going to be. But the 2012 DTT migration regulations are very clear in terms of objectives and expectations there. So there is 5%. I think we were proactive in designing for DTH. There was no explicitly DTH initially. I think it was by our act that we proposed it into the regulation that the DTH option be included to serve as a gap filler. It is being preferred now to be the main, and I think we highlighted the risk earlier in our presentation. Thank you.
I think we're done. Thank you, Chairperson. I think from our side, I would then hand it over to Ms. Malande, our director, to just conclude it, and we will, we conclude our presentation. Director Malande.
Okay, thank you very much to the committee members. Thank you, Chairperson, as well as the executives. We appreciate the opportunity to have been given the platform to come and present, as well as all the discussions and all the comments. We do take them to heart. And as the executives have been saying, we will continue to work with the SABC as partners. We will continue to work with the department on the business model on going forward. We are constantly working on that, as well as the BBI merger. If there is no other questions, we would also like to request the chairperson if we can be excused from the other items that follow. Thank you, Chairperson.
Chair, I asked a question and I don't think it was responded to.
Okay, Honorable Faku, I'm still waiting also for the department just to come in on that side. What will happen on the issue of the policy if the Sentech is moving out at all on the side of having those working relations with the SABC. I think they will take. Were you directing the question to the Sentech, Honorable Faku, or were it was in the department? Can you repeat it again in order that they can come in to respond before they can leave, Honorable Faku?
Chair, thanks, Chair. I asked a question in my opening remarks about how will the SABC cash up on the Sentech debt. I don't know, I did not get a response in that. And also, can Sentech afford to reduce the current debt that the SABC has? And I think Honorable Mackenzie has also asked a question to the DG about the merger. If she can respond, I'm also interested. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Honorable Bulfaku. Maybe the network, you were lost, but let the Sentech respond also to you before the department. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chairperson. I think the first question, which is how will the SABC catch up on the debt? We are in constant discussions with the SABC. I think they're very transparent about what they can do by when. We've set a deadline, which is the end of the financial year, where we are expecting that the debt must be settled by then. They are working towards that. So I think it's, as things go, as their cash flow improves, they honestly make every effort to honor their obligation, and we do appreciate that. But the target is that maybe we should close the debt by the end of the financial year. Can we, as Sentech, afford to reduce the cost with these orders of magnitude of debt that SABC owes us? The answer, honorable members, is that no, we can't afford that, because Sentech's business is largely relying on signal distribution revenue, which majority of which is the SABC. So we do appeal to the government and Treasury to do whatever is possible to assist the SABC to get the funds which they need to be able to run their operations and be able to cover their cost, especially the cost of signal distribution, because without a signal distribution, there is no broadcasting. So us and SABC are kind of linked on the hip or tied on the hip. We are those twins which you cannot easily separate. So would like to say we'll work together to do whatever is possible to assist where we can, but we don't have deep pockets, so we cannot assist in funding the cost of signal distribution for the SABC. I do trust that that answers the questions. And the question of the merger timelines, I think that was asked. I will ask the DG to help us with answering the timelines question. I have indicated on the modeling that the team, department, Sentech and Broadband Infraco are working on finalizing the business case, but I think it's a project driven by the DG's office. I would leave that to her to give the details. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and I trust that I've covered all the questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I give to the DG?
Thank you, Honorable Chair and members. Chair, just wanted to say that the process has been ongoing. We, through the office of DDG Shelembe, we have finalized the business case, and then this business case, it's being finalized, and it will be submitted to National Treasury and the Public Service and Administration. Thereafter, we intend drafting a bill which will be consulted on within the economic cluster system. And we anticipate that because when I say economic cluster, then there will be various interests in this regard, such as your DTIC, because of the broadband issues, and it comes to broadband infracom. So our target is that the draft bill should be sent to Cabinet by the end of June in 2021. And once Cabinet then approves, then we will follow the processes of ensuring that a legislative process of Parliament it goes through. And then we target then 2022 to make sure that legislatively, because it has to be a legislated entity, that legislatively wise, we are on track and we have legislation that has been tabled before Parliament that will be responsive, and then we'll table that before Parliament. That is our target date. I do not know, DDG Shelembe, if I have missed anything, because it has been left mostly from your office. Me, I am just leading high level. Shelembe.
Thank you, DG, and good day to Chairperson and honorable members and colleagues. I think, Acting DG, you have captured the essence of where we are with the merger process, except maybe we can just add that even in the private sector, acquisitions and mergers are the most sophisticated and technical of the corporate restructurings. And given our limited financial resources, we are unable to source in any technical assistance. So we are doing most of the work in-house within the department and the entities in question. So we have, as the acting DG said, we have finalized the business case, which needs to then be approved by the Ministers of Finance and Public Service and Administration. And simultaneously, we are now working on the draft legislation that will need to be approved by Cabinet early next year for submission to Parliament. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, DDG Shelembe. And also let me thank the Sentech, as they are asking to be released much more earlier, to say let's keep on engaging. And I'm happy because now you can see you are having that passion to work with your clients. SABC is a priority also on your side. With those frustrations that they are tabling, I think when we are keep on engaging one another, finally we will have a resolution actually to resolve how best can you assist the SABC, because it's a very key on your side, a client that you are working with. And also just to thank the department on trying to make these meetings to be in this form when you know that there are those challenges. Each entity must find one another because they know that they are relating to one another. Thanks very much. I can release the Sentech and go over to the side of the USAASA, which is the second entity which will present today. Can I also give, before I give to Sentech, to USAASA to check with the DG first before they can present. DG?
Thank you, Chair. We leave the meeting.
Thank you, Chairperson.
All right, I'm back. Honorable Kubek.
You can continue, Chair. Over to you. Thank you very much, Chair.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a correction that with regard to today's agenda, it is OUTA that would present, as we clarified in the beginning of the meeting. USAASA and the department are also here to also listen to the presentation in preparation for the feedback that they would need to give us as a response to OUTA. I take it that the OUTA representative is still with us. I saw earlier Stephanie Fick. Given the time constraints we have, we would still want to give you your 15 minutes to present, and I'm sure members would thereafter clarify whatever they would need to clarify, understanding that it's not a direct response because we would need the department and USAASA to come back to respond to the matters that have been raised. I'm sure you are ready on your side to proceed, Ms. Fair.
Thank you, Honourable Chair, and thank you, Honourable members. We really appreciate this opportunity to make this presentation. It is really an honour. I am Advocate Stefanie Fick, but I'm by team, and would like to do this on behalf of the team. Thank you. So let's move on. Maybe if we can do this sort of quickly, we can, if there are any questions, we can deal with those. So the presentation is about the anomalies relating to the broadcasting digital migration program. And let me just start as an introduction of this mandate. It is the challenging and taking action against maladministration and corruption, but it is always about, creating a better South Africa for all. And, although corruption is an illness, we also need to deal with the consequences of corruption, because corruption creates, there's a lot of consequences. Therefore, combating corruption is vitally important. So let me move on. The importance of compliance with legislation is therefore also extremely important to us. For example, the PFMA, the Public Finance Management Act, which basically highlights transparency, accountability, and recourse by government. Let's move to the broadcasting digital migration policy, which is the underlying policy or policy environment for our complaint. Now, the broadcasting digital migration, obviously, I think as this committee will know, is the process of converting the broadcast of television and radio signal from analog to digital technology. Now, in terms of the BDM policy, the rollout of the digital infrastructure aimed to achieve the national coverage of digital broadcasting to cover 50% of the population by end of 2008, 80% by 2010, and close to 100% by 2011. We are not even close to accomplishing that. So the broadcasting digital migration policy was to create an environment for the uptake of digital terrestrial television by TV households, including the poor. Society is confronted by a wide range of developmental challenges, such as reducing the digital divide, building social cohesion and a common national identity, poverty eradication, and employment creation. So digital broadcasting has the potential to contribute significantly to addressing these challenges. So that's why to implement the digital migration is extremely important. The policy, obviously, to implement the digital migration within a 3-year dual illumination period. So why is OUTA here? Firstly, civil society has got a very important role in ensuring transparency. A type of a watchdog is needed in a space where accountability may fall short. It's not always necessary to revert to the judiciary, but as a last resort, we sometimes that is the only route. And it is important to look after our state-owned institutions who sometimes have an indifference towards transparency. We are also here to highlight the associated costs with the broadcasting digital migration program. and the financial impact of the project completion being overdue by a lot of years, by, if one takes into account 2011, by 9 years, although there were some concessions made in the years. We're also here to emphasize the lack of proper oversight, because intervention is needed, and that's why we're here, because we do believe that this committee will be able to do that, to ensure accountability. And to put questions, we end off this presentation with a few questions that after our investigations, we still do not have the answers thereto, and maybe this committee can make sure that there is clarity on some of the unanswered questions. So the broadcasting digital migration, what is USAASA's role in the digital migration? You know, SASA is a public body like Sentech, we've heard, as confirmed by Schedule 3A of the PFMA. Then the existence, functions, duty, and the mandate of the agency are governed by sections 80 to 91 of the 91 of the Electronic Communications Act 36 of 2005. Now, the legislative mandate with reference to the ECA include the strive to promote the goal of universal access and universal service, to manage the Universal Service Access Fund in accordance with the relevant provisions of the Act, to utilize the USAF fund exclusively for the payment of certain subsidies, responsible to disburse, subsidize STBs to approximately 5 million TV-owning households that are considered needy and deserving. Very important. This is for the needy and deserving. As part of the broadcast digital migration program, USAASA is also was required to appoint suppliers, manufacturers of locally produced set-top boxes and antennas, from which the set-top boxes are to be procured for distribution to qualifying households through the South African Post Office network, and then also to manage a database of installers, which will be used to provide the set-top boxes installation service to households that qualify. Now, the expenditure, which is, one of the bigger reasons why we are here today making this presentation. During the 2016-2017 financial year, Sentech has supported the Ministry of Communication in its digital terrestrial television awareness campaign. Dual illumination is the cost associated with running both analog and digital signals, as we've heard. The estimated cost for dual illumination for the 2016 financial year was 131 million, and the fund allocated amount was 99 million rand, leaving a funding deficit of 32 million. Due to the funding deficit caused by dual illumination in the 2016 financial year, the medium-term expenditure framework allocated 140 million for the 2017 financial year and 149 million for the 2018 financial year. USAASA's expenditure for the 2017-2018 financial year exceeded the budget, which was mainly driven by warehousing costs, logistics, distribution expenses relating to the broadcasting digital migration, and legal costs. And still, we still don't have the migration. USAF was established in terms of Section 89 of the ECT Act, Electronic Communications Act of 2005. The fund is managed by USAASA with a total budget for 2016-2017 year, I do apologize, and approximately 80% of this amount was held in relation to the BDM project commitments, totaling 1.5 billion rand. To subsidize the provision for qualifying household vouchers 1.6 billion over the medium term is allocated to USAF, and 275 million rand is allocated to USAASA to compensate the post office for the administration of the project. A further 100 million is allocated to Sentech in 2021-2022 financial year for dual illumination, allowing the entity to operate both analog and digital signals until the digital migration is fully implemented. As a result, spending in the broadcasting digital migration program is expected to increase from 312.8 million rand in 2019-2020 to 1.4 billion rand in 2021-2022. For USAP, transfers and subsidies, mostly for implementing projects related to the BBM migration in 2020 and 2021, and 2021 and 2022, account for an estimated 98.1%, 2.2 billion rand of a total expenditure over the medium term. The Deputy Minister of Communications, Pinky Kana, stated that the cost of storing the set-top boxes in the SAPA warehouses has reached about 72 million rand per annum, as there has been little progress with the installation. We also run the following risks. The reality is that the set-top boxes may become obsolete if the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies does not act soon. Technology does not get better with age, it actually gets worse with age. Now, example of the impact of wasteful expenditure relating to the BDM program. Storage cost of housing the set-top boxes at SAPA warehouses equating to 72 million rand per annum, including that the risk of the set-top boxes over time become obsolete, which has its own associated costs. They will become useless. Dual illumination costs for both analog and digital mediums. Analog switch off is 7 years overdue, resulting in unwanted expenses to service both mediums. Stock control deficiencies have plagued the broadcasting digital migration project, which has an inventory of about 500 million. And by year end, it was found that some equipment could not be located as a result of ineffective stock control, as per USAF's 2018-2019 annual report. The 2015-2016 Auditor General report highlighted possible collusion with regards to the appointed set-top box manufacturers, and National Treasury's commissioned PricewaterhouseCoopers to investigate the set-top box tender process. And that commissioned report is not made public as of today. Oversight and consequence management is what we think is needed and well overdue. Effective oversight and consequence management is extremely important in ensuring that public services are delivered effectively, efficiently, and with due regard to all South Africa's citizens. Repeated lack of oversight and consequence management led to long-term problems and breakdown in leadership credibility. Holding people accountable, we believe, involves 3 steps, namely, formulate clear expectations. This is achieved when one obtains agreement by the responsible individuals to meet or exceed set expectations. We need to hold people to account that does not abide by the expectations. What about disciplinary hearings against individuals that is not willing to do their job to the benefit of a better South Africa? Proactive oversight. Create feedback channels to ensure that the team members, internal and external customers, can provide progress on task delivery. Gather and review data points, creating confidence in the team members' performance as per the agreed expectations. And then consequence management. Apply the appropriate consequences. If individuals do not deliver what they committed to deliver, engage and resolve the barrier. Stay committed to the accountability strategy. Holding individuals accountable for their non-performance will ensure that South African citizens will receive higher quality products and services, and the risk associated with wasteful expenditure, maladministration, fraud and corruption will be mitigated. What consequence management was followed? What consequence management was followed? By the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies, or USAASA, with regards to the wasteful storage cost, poor stock control resulting in financial losses, as well as 5 years of wasteful expenditure with regards to dual illumination. Development and execution of comprehensive migration plan. Stakeholders should be included in the migration planning process, both to foster stakeholder support to the plan and to ensure that the government is incorporating the best possible information. Stakeholders can use the comprehensive digital migration plan as a basis against which all parties can measure implementation progress and success. Address key costs and identify funding sources. Digital migration plans incur significant costs, including new and upgraded broadcasting and transmission equipment, end-user set-top boxes, and consumer awareness programs. Outline a clear spectrum usage plan. The digital migration plan should have a clear vision of spectrum arrangements, both during and after the migration period. Clear and early spectrum planning eases the work of transmission operators deploying networks. And then ensure consumer awareness. It is crucial that consumers are aware of the migration process and specifically the effect that it will have on them in terms of new equipment requirements as well as timelines. In conclusion, the broadcasting digital migration process, the analog switch off is several years overdue. Wasteless and fruitless expenditure on dual illumination costs as a result of not being fully digital. Additional and unwanted expenditure is still being incurred on expense items like storage, logistics, and legal costs. Thousands of households who have qualified for government subsidized set-top boxes are still waiting to be set up. All the core components of the broadcasting digital migration program has already been developed and it's yet not being implemented. Executive behavior should change to ensure that proper oversight and consequence management is implemented and individuals are held accountable. Now, here are a few of the unanswered questions after investigating the reasons for the hold-up of the broadcasting digital migration process. Can USAASA account for all the expenditure on the BDM program to date? What is the reason for considering moving USAASA's mandate to Sentech? What role will USAASA then play if Sentech takes over USAASA's mandate in terms of the BDM program? What form of consequent management did USAASA take for mismanagement of taxpayers' money? Can all the set-top boxes manufactured, received, and paid for USAASA be physically accounted for? And what are the risks and associated costs of the set-top boxes in storage if these set-top boxes become redundant due to aging technology? I again want to reiterate and say thank you for the opportunity to provide this presentation to Parliament, we really need to address the consequences of corruption in South Africa, which has implication on each and every one of us, but specifically the marginalized and poor of South Africa. Unemployment runs rampant. If one looks at the figures just stated in this presentation, one has to think of what that amount of money could have done to a lot of unfortunate South Africans. To what extent could we have provided health services? To what extent could we have provided education? We also just want to state that we've done a big pestle analysis that looks at all the stakeholders. If the committee is interested, it is unfortunately a 92-page document, but if this committee is interested, we will happily provide the committee with the document. We did try and engage with USAASA. We sent them a letter on the 8th of October, but unfortunately hasn't received any answer as to whether we can discuss our findings and what is happening. We are also of the opinion that one also has to look at, the vacancies in key positions, especially in USAASA, so that USAASA can function properly within its mandate, although the question remains that if Sentech takes over, what will the role be that USAASA play? And also we also believe that the whole encryption debacle needs to be resolved, because whether that should play part in the digital migration, all of these little issues has got a great impact, but the impact is on South Africans. I really, really thank you.
Speak from OUTA. That's the presentation, honorable members. I'm sure you'd want to engage, getting clarities with an understanding that we still have the department as well as USAASA still coming before this committee to formally respond to matters raised by OUTA in this regard. I see Honorable Faku's hand is up, Honorable Mackenzie's hand is up. I will take those in the meantime, and I will get indications if there are other members' hands that are up.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you for the presentation from OUTA. I think we appreciate what you are bringing to the committee. And I think it's very important that we also emphasize on the issue of corruption. I think President of the country, President Ramaphosa, was very clear when he started the sixth administration that corruption must be fought in all fronts. So I think if there's anyone within the state entities or within any department who has been found doing wrongdoing, that person must be held accountable. And I think as a committee, we are very firm when it comes to corruption, that if there's anyone that has been found doing anything wrong, that person must be held accountable. To steal from the public, I think it's something that is very terrible. And I think as the ruling party, we are very firm to say that if you steal, law enforcement must deal with you. On that one, we're very clear. I think on the point of storage that we are raising, I think at this point as a committee, we've been very firm on it to say that we're not happy with the amount of storage that is the money that has been used to store these set-top boxes. Hence, you will see that after, as a committee, we have made sure that USAASA comes up with a plan to make sure that these set-top boxes are distributed as per policy directive. Hence, you see that USAASA is currently in a service level agreement with Sentech to make sure that I think that SLA is currently been finalized to make sure that these set-top boxes are really taken to its rightful owners. So we, with the good work that Sentech has done thus far, we understand that these issues will be dealt with immediately. But really, when the amount that we're paying when it comes to the storage of the set-top boxes, one is just not happy about it. I think even myself, I've been raising that. I think when it comes to the DTT, now we're like in the middle. We're at the tip point of things. So we can't go away from DTT. I am of the firm view that DTT transmission costs can be lowered if all parties focus on getting customer onto DTT. I think if we can do this thing, we will be able to move. But also, we need the department to be firm in terms of doing oversight to these entities. And I think the acting DG is here. We want to hear from them as well. What are the immediate plans to make sure that this set of boxes are really taken to its rightful owners? I think, Chair, on consequence management, if USAASA, if there are any officials within the entities that have done anything wrong, you need to suspend people. You need not to wait for processes, suspend people, take them aside, because the president has spoken about people who are corrupt in these entities and departments. So I think when we, I think, Chair, on this one, we're very clear. We are not going to defend any wrongdoings. If there's anyone who's been found doing wrong, I think we just need to be firm as a committee to say that people must deal with their issues. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Faku. I will now take Honorable Mackenzie.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you, Advocate, for your presentation. I think the work of OUTA speaks for itself. I still don't pay those e-tolls. Just in terms of your presentation, Advocate, I mean, I've been sitting and dealing with the SASA for at least 6 years now. And I think many of the issues you've raised, we're not unfamiliar with them, and we agree with almost everything you have to say. I think your presentation was quite strong on digital migration and the failure of that project. And in fact, the very first speech I gave in the House in 2014 was exactly around the deadline of July 2015 for analog switch off. And then Minister Kwere assured me that we would meet that deadline. And here we are. So, you know, clearly the costs associated, as you say, fruitless and wasteful expenditure, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of rands that we needn't have occurred. What you didn't cover, I think, was the SA Connect side of USAASA's and USAP's business, which is rolling out connectivity in many deep rural areas. And a lot of I'm going to hesitate to use the word, the corruption and the mismanagement that went on around the allocation of that. You spoke of consequence management. Now, let me give you an idea of consequence management as it's applied. Lumko Mtinde was the CEO, correct me if I'm wrong, of the entity for several years, during which time, you know, all this misperformance happened. Mr. Mtinde is now a special advisor in the Department of Communications. So when we talk about consequence management, you know, there's a perfect example of how you get rewarded for poor performance. I think in terms of the Digital Development Fund as well, events have largely overtaken us. I think, you know, there seems to be almost common cause that the set-top box thing has just ground to a halt because of COVID. The installers have fallen off the bandwagon, so it's been handed over to Sentech, just on the basis that they would be able to do an effective job of getting those last boxes out. And I think, you know, generally we must support that, because they certainly are quite competent. But then you have the other issue where government's saying, okay, it's not just set-top boxes that we're going to use for DTT, because we know that there's an urgency, you know, given the auction for spectrum in the 700 megahertz band. So we know there's an urgency behind that. You've got to free up those 700 megahertz bands so we can allocate that to MNOs. So it's in everybody's interest to shut this down as soon as possible. And I think to that end, government came out with the idea of IDTVs and vouchers. So you almost have three ways now we can reach this goal: IDTVs, vouchers, and set-top boxes. Now, to my mind, we should be able to do it very quickly, given that we have those three options. I mean, you make all these options available to our people, the 5 million people who still need, or around 5 million that need to be connected, make it available and get the job done. So we're right with you. Ma'am, I support your work and thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you, Chairperson.
You are smiling.
There is Honorable Kubeka.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. And also let me appreciate the presentation that we have received today with our advocate. And also let me appreciate to say, indeed, as this committee, I think we are fully much aware on the side of the corruption to say all over the country. We are raising the issue of corruption sharply so. But let me start by saying, I think whatever challenges that we found it in the department actually when we arrived since from last year, I think there are things that they have the department have already raised, and we are trying on a serious note to try to work on those challenges in order that we need to rectify whatever mistakes that they have been there as the advocate is trying to present. Especially these are the issues that you are raising, that they are already in our meetings as we are sitting. We are trying to work on a serious note on the side of the USAASA. We are working very hard on the side of SAPO. Hence, we know that as the OUTA, I'm sure it was listening today on the side of the presentation of Sentech, to say we are saying the one who's having at least that strength. That is the reason actually we decided to use the issue of Sentech to say where you can have a solution to resolve the challenges that are there. Come in order that we can resolve those things, because those are the things that are affecting our nation actually. And those are the things that are going direct to the poor of the poorest who are supposed to be benefited. And at the end of the day, you can see that now they are prolonging, taking a longer time. But that is why now we are coming even with plans in order that we can see on the issue of the time frames to whatever delivery that the entities that needs to take. We are pushing on a harder note to try to play that oversight. But we are saying, indeed, whatever happened when it's supposed to be worked on the issue of the side of corruption, there we can't hide. We know our position as the government to say, what are we saying there? So believe me, as we are working, we will also go bit by bit, but slowly, surely, to confront those challenges that we are having at the moment in this committee, in this department, as you are raising on the side of USAASA, because indeed we are even having a time frame on those side of the set-top boxes to say it's been long and it needs indeed, if and only if we are saying we are late. The time frame March comes 2021, everything needs to be covered. So we appreciate, we will keep on working, challenging all those challenges that we are confronting with in this department. So we are saying to advocate, thanks very much. We will work hand in hand with the department and those entities that have been affected. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Kubeka. I'm sure, Advocate, you'd understand that the members at this point are making brief comments because there will still be an engagement by members on the actual responses from the department and USAASA as the entity. But of course, as Honorable Kubega has just said, you have a better advantage of having listened to a presentation by Sentech, which says that there is some work that's being done. But because you spoke to the point of oversight, much as you may have been referring to the department, but indirectly you are also saying to the committee that plays the oversight on both the entities and the department, that we should scale up in terms of that work. And I think Honorable Kubeka is trying to demonstrate that element. Maybe in the answers from the department, there will be more clarity, including on the report that you say would have not been published. But I must say that from the committee side, we have had an opportunity of looking at the legacy report, and some of the things that we have been doing as we have kickstarted this term has been to follow up on matters raised in the legacy report. And this would have not been one of those that would have picked up, which therefore says that we may need to have an answer whether your questions are based on an interim report or is it a final report that was commissioned, because then the actions that must follow would be on the basis of a final report. And I'm sure a person like yourself, you would know why we'll be skeptical if it was just an interim report, because on presentations, giving the side, the other side, an opportunity to present, it may change the final report because they need to take into account facts that are presented. So I'm just saying that in the response, probably the department may give more info in that regard. But as far as the legacy report is concerned, the committee would have not been seized with that, except the fact that we agree with you that the BDM program is long overdue. And I think as the committee, Honorable Faku also said it, we would want to emphasize the fight on corruption, because that's something we need to do. But it is not really at the end of it that we must deal with it. And I think that's the choice that the committee had to make, that probably we need to strengthen the governance in the delivery of BDM. And in doing so, we understood that it will not be delivered by USAASA alone, because there are many other stakeholders that play a role. And therefore, in putting up a project team that implements and makes sure that the timelines that Honorable Kubeka was referring to are met, is to try and get everybody who's an interested and affected party to be involved throughout the implementation program, so that it makes it easy for the committee to do its oversight work, so that you don't meet USAASA and then they say, no, we're still waiting for Sentech, or we're waiting for the post office to capture the beneficiaries. And the post office would say probably the beneficiaries are still outstanding from whether municipality or from the side of social development, as an example. So you try to integrate the work done so that finally you deliver, because we have an appreciation that we cannot continue in the way we've been doing things. Things have to change. So I think from where we are as the committee, the focus is changing to more of making things to happen through our oversight. Of course, appreciating that they could have been done better, but we can't reverse that has happened. But South Africans will judge us more on what we do now going forward. So I'm just saying, please appreciate that aspect, that there's some work done by the committee, hence there are timelines and so on. And as I say, with the advantage of listening to the Sentech presentation, you would also understand why this PDM is important in us resolving problems in SABC and the other broadcasters. So I just thought if I don't just firm up that point, even though we're not responding directly now, it helps that when we get to the department and they begin to raise some of the interventions which are as a result of committee discussions, at least you would have known that this would have been an initiative from the committee. All the other worries about technology, obsolete, and so on, if going through our records, a number of these members would have raised that before, and there were assurances given that there would be something that gets done in that scope. Maybe just one point to underscore would be that whilst in the past the focus was more on the poor households, which are dependent more from the funding from USAF, as you would have mentioned, the committee's approach has been that we still need to strike the balance. That there are those that may not be in the house, in the poor households, which is what you would call the unsubsidized market, but they also want to have access in terms of DTT, that is the switching to DTT from analog, and that some means have to be devised that they can access gadgets in that way, whether I call them antennas or set-top boxes, in whatever form it takes, but they are easily accessible. And in the view of the committee, it's also been about addressing natural subsidization, because with other services, people have been able to do that, not waiting until subsidies are available. And this is how Ubuntu is also about to be able to help each other. So we not have the granny not having access to other channels when the grandson or granddaughter is able to assist. But it therefore says there must be an access point. Where would they get such gadgets and so on? And I think when the department responds, they will be able to talk to that also, what is being done on the unsubsidized market, because necessarily that's where your bigger numbers are. And with the other broadcasters, for example, they're already on DTT in the other spaces, whereas the national broadcaster that's funded by government has not been able to because of this part. So that's where we are. But I just thought you should leave the meeting knowingly. We could have also decided that indeed just give us the documents so that we go through them and respond. But I want you to also understand that it is not just an opportunity that we present, but it is the commitment that we have of ensuring that Parliament is the Parliament of the people. And it is through participation of also civil society that we also gauge the work we do, in particular the responsiveness of government, which is a constitutional obligation, because that's what we committed in the Constitution. So we do that, whether it's through round table discussions sometimes, if you were following what the committee does. All these platforms are about ensuring that we also hear different views, especially those that have insight of what happens in the sector, so that those who play oversight like ourselves, we are also having at least a bit of knowledge of what the people in the sector are experiencing and what could be solutions in that. And we think we are not far from what the president has asked us to do in social compacts and getting social partners to participate in one way or the other to reconstruct the economy of the country and so on. So I just thought it's important that one makes those reflections. But as I said, it's merely comments at this point. and time, I would give you an opportunity to comment, but I do see that, is it Honorable Faku? Was your hand up before or is it now?
It's up now, Chair.
Honorable Kubeka, is your hand up now or was it up at the time? So it means at that time. So I'll then take Honorable Faku before Advocate for comments, and then I can then do some closing remarks finally.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thanks, Chair. Chair, I think I just need to say something before maybe you allow Advocate to speak. I think it's important that as a committee we noted that I hear that Honorable Mackenzie is raising the name of Mr. Mtimda that is in the presidency. I think we need to make sure that we make sure that the public really know what transpired. If we remember, as you are talking about the legacy report, Chair, that we have received, so that people don't think there's no consequence management when dealing with officials, although we want to fight corruption, but I think we need to be clear. If we remember during the time of Mr. Mtimda at USAASA, when he was the board chair, the public protector, the report that was released, which had remedial actions, which cleared him, and also the report from the High Court from Justice Sandile Ngcobo. So I think also then Minister of Communication, I think it was Siyabonga Cwele, who also uplifted his suspension because of the remedial actions of the public protector there. So I think, Chair, it's important that we don't think that our government is not taking any action against officials. There were remedial action by the public protector, and also he was cleared of any wrongdoing. So I think I needed to clear that so that there's no wrong perception that our government is not taking action. And Mr. Mtimda was cleared from everything. Thanks, Chair.
So thank you, Honorable Faku, for that clarity. I think it's important. If there would have been a mention of a name, that helps to clarify. Otherwise, there will be a wrong public perception, especially if you've been cleared. The allegations could have been made before, but once you are cleared, at least the public should still know that you've been cleared on those. Thanks, Honorable Faku. So if I can give to Advocate Phil to reflect on the comments made, and that we can then wrap up on this item.
Thank you, Chair and honourable members. Thank you for the comments. I think that's why we felt we could come to this committee, and we really want to, give kudos to this committee for the work that you've done already. I think a lot of the comments we do get from your discussions in this committee. So thank you so much for allowing us to make this presentation. Although some of the facts you may already know, we do think it is important to keep on saying, accountability until, whether it's, everything doesn't have to be criminal, as long as there's steps taken and as long as we learn from a process that might go wrong for whatever reasons. And that I believe this committee, if they say that, if someone is guilty of corruption, the steps will be taken. And if there's a problem in the process, that the process will be rectified. So again, thank you on behalf of myself, my team, and on behalf of OUTA. We really, really are thankful for this opportunity. We will watch this space to see that digital migration happens for our fellow South Africans, and we believe in what this committee can do. So thank you very much.
Thank you. As we said, honourable members, we would still engage the matter when the department and USAASA reports, and that will also be open to the public, so you can follow the discussions from wherever it be, because there's really nothing to add, but more to give confidence to the South Africans that we are responding to matters that get raised with the committee. Thanks. Would not keep you knowingly that you may have other engagements to get to, but we really thank you for making time when we gave you the opportunity to. Thank you. Thank you. Honorable members, I know now we are left with a few minutes to the scheduled time. Trying to check if Lucy has logged in here. Right, we're supposed to get a presentation from WITS Center.
I am present, Chair.
Okay, you are here. Okay, thanks, Lucy. We'll allow you to get in, but I just thought we should just wrap up proper the two sessions we had, so that when we get to you, we know how to manage the time. If you can just indicate on the side, Lucy, that you would need what time, because we just need to extend 17 minutes. I don't think would be enough. For members, I know that at 2 o'clock there is a house sitting, and a number of members who are attending physically would have to make their way to Parliament after 12 at least.
I'm
so
in your
just
hands, Chair.
indicate-
I think that's fine. We can manage by 12:30.
Okay. All right. With that, honorable members having been clarified, I just thought it's important to just emphasize the two discussions so that as we get to the next meetings next week, we are clearer. I think with Sentech, there's, I think, a bit of clarity now with regard to cost and so on. And I know there's been a request with regard to the margins that it be in writing because of commercial sensitivity. That would follow up as a committee to ensure that committee members to receive that information, as well as I think more importantly is the engagement that continues between the SABC and Sentech. And I want to say to members the importance of that confirmation by Sentech is to really also validate what the Deputy Minister reported as work that she's coordinating between the entities as delegated by the Minister to work with those entities. I think it's the work we should be able to support, and I take it that members would use that information when we have discussions with the SABC in the next meeting. As I said, with OUTA, they will probably be on the platform on the day of the discussion, but what will then happen would be that the department will be the ones responding to the department, and USAASA will be the ones that will be presenting in response to OUTA on the day. So I just thought it's important to remind ourselves that that's what we would be expecting. I'm doing this so that we don't get back to such issues when we are now on this other item that WITS Center will take us through. Honorable Faku, I see your hand. You have not lowered it. And Honorable.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry.
Okay, so it means you have not necessarily raised. Honorable McKenzie, I see your hand is not lowered.
Yes, thank you, Chair. If I could just, with your indulgence, just add to your rather excellent, usually excellent summary. In terms of the margin for Sentech, Mr. Nlamli-Boy did give us an indication that the margin was in the range of between 12 and 20%, which is certainly not excessive as far as I'm concerned in terms of a sustainable business. So I don't think Sentech need to provide that information anymore, but I'll remain open to your guidance. Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay. No, thanks, Honorable McKenzie. But as you know, that's a range. But if they were to give us specifics, that's why they would not do it in public. That's fine. Thanks for that clarity, because I think that is at the time I would have lost connection. Otherwise, yeah, that's where we are. We would now hand over to WITS Center, Prof. Lucy.
Thank you very much, Chair. I will just share my screen in a moment. Good morning, honourable members, colleagues. Is my screen visible?
Hello, Lucy. Yes, it is.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
wonderful. Thank you very much. So this is the second, actually the third formal presentation that we are making to this committee. The previous presentation also included members from other committees. And I thought that for today's session, I did confer with Mbombo Maleka about the content of today's presentation. But I thought that for today's presentation, I would look at a few of, let's call them the cornerstones or the building blocks for the SADC digital economy. And in a sense, this is what the Parliamentary Committee does on a regular basis, maybe in a slightly different way, because it is looking backwards or it is looking at the current state of events. And what I heard in the brief session this morning, your comments about Sentech, the presentation on broadcast digital migration, to a large extent looks backwards and at the current state of affairs. But the SADC region economy has, as we all know, many very serious challenges which cannot be easily addressed or perhaps even addressed at all without moving that regional economy into the digital economy. And I talk about the SADC regional economy today because the South African economy itself cannot evolve and develop on its own. In the era of digitalization, no economy evolves on its own. This is not just about globalization because, of course, the South African economy is already part of the global landscape. But as the global landscape transitions to a digital economy, individual countries will find it more and more difficult to participate in the digital economy as single countries, as standalone markets. We're not going to get into the detail of why this is. It would be a good conversation to have maybe in another session when we are not so pressed for time. I'm going to try to end my presentation by 12:15 so that we have a few minutes for conversation. So if we think about these building blocks, these cornerstones for the regional economy, they include institutions such as Parliament and parliamentary committees, regulators, policymakers, and others. Another cornerstone is policy, and then, of course, law and regulation. So just taking some of the highlights from the past two modules, the broad policy and regulatory agenda for this committee and for many other committees begins to converge. Because it is not only this committee that will discuss 5G policy futures, additive manufacturing, digital government, digital health services, and digital skills. But all parliamentary committees must have digital transitions, digital transformation of the economy and society on their agenda. And I'm aware that there has been some initial work by this committee to engage with those other committees. And I think that work will need to continue. That at least until all parliamentary committees and all select committees have digital innovation, digital transitions, digital transformation of economy and society as items on their annual agenda. All committees. This is now the business of the whole of Parliament. The PCC and the Select Committee dealing with communications still have particular mandates, particular issues to pay attention to that are different or slightly different from those of other committees, but I think that one of the items on the agenda for this committee is to promote digital as an agenda item on every other committee agenda. I'll say something about the pace of policy adoption and regulation as it is linked to legislation for South Africa, model laws for the SADC region, the work of the SADC Parliamentary Forum, and then very briefly something about the powers and functions of key institutions. So, from the perspective of digital economy strategies, we see that the DCDT has introduced some thinking, some strategies, some documents, but really, this is not just a matter for the DCDT. So what I've said about Parliament and parliamentary committees and the issues of digital transformation being on the agendas of all committees, I would say a similar thing in relation to policy and government departments, namely that all government departments will have, should have, must have digital economy strategies on the agenda. And I'll just highlight a few. One, additive manufacturing. We do have an additive manufacturing strategy for South Africa. There is some early transition, some early shift of the manufacturing sector to adopt additive manufacturing. Additive manufacturing meaning a wide variety of new forms of manufacturing. Let me call it technology intensive manufacturing. Manufacturing which is digitally different, and in most instances you see that the manufactured product is built up by layers in various formats. And we can have another conversation on additive manufacturing. This is just a quick perspective. But as we know very well, the first government inherited a declining, and one might say a failing, manufacturing sector. And the South African manufacturing sector is struggling to be competitive. It is struggling to compete against the most advanced countries in the world, and the most advanced countries in terms of manufacturing, where already there is intensive adoption of digital approaches to manufacturing, can squeeze just about every other country out of global markets. And we are being squeezed out. So one might say, what has this got to do with the portfolio on communications? Well, the portfolio on communications, Committee on Communications, is interested in and has oversight over, to some extent, the pace of policy adoption and regulation. It does not only have oversight over the individual institutions and what they do, but also the pace at which they engage in that activity. And so if policy and regulation with respect to providing that digital ecosystem is slow, then the portfolio committee has something to say. What I've said for additive manufacturing is equally true for digital government services and applications, digital media streaming, which is really where broadcasting is moving, digital pedagogy and content streaming for online learning, which is where basic education is moving, fintech, which is where banking is moving, digital health services, which is where primary health care is moving. And of course, that all goes along with data protection and digital skills. And what this means is that a comprehensive review of the regulatory environment is required, because the current regulatory environment will not keep us going for 2021, 2022. I would say we're very unprepared for 2023, 2025, 2027, and so on. And while historically the situation was different, that you could, in 2013 prepare for 2016, and in 2016 prepare for 2020, that world is gone. We now have to prepare increasingly well in advance in order to manage the significant agenda content of policy and regulation, the extent required for policy and regulation to provide this ecosystem within which we can migrate. Migrate is just as good a word as transition. And what we've just heard about broadcast digital migration is, of course, for the attention of the committee rather than for my attention, but it also speaks of the pace of adoption and migration. So we seem to have a bit of a pace problem, not just us. You might say every country in the world has a pace problem, but perhaps we have it slightly more than we should for our needs as South Africa, as a South African economy and society. And that comprehensive review means that it's not only ICASA regulations that need to be reviewed, it's also NERSA, it's the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, it's the Health Professions Council, it's the Consumer Committee and Consumer Commission, and many others. The entire regulatory environment needs a refresh, needs to have foresight, needs to be well prepared, not only from the perspective of the transition from 4G to 5G communications networks, but really the opportunities that build on those networks. We are concerned about the transition from 4G to 5G, not because we care that much about the network side, but because the network is the foundation for all these opportunities. The digital health, the very fast internet that we need to do all kinds of medical scans, brain scans, and others at a distance, remotely. Perhaps this is a scan of a patient in a smart village in Lephalale. Perhaps this is digital content streaming for grade 8 and grade 9 learners in Lephalale. So we are spectacularly unprepared while we look backward, and it's very important to look backward and to look at the current, but it is equally important to look forward. The next two slides I borrowed from one of the lecturers in the course last week. I'm sure he won't mind, since you were participants in many of the lectures. That a few other points about what we build on this 5G network. And of course, the 5G network doesn't go everywhere. It goes to the points where you need 5G networks. We are seeing the cloudification of everything. So everything is moving to the cloud. This kind of remote healthcare can only happen in the cloud. This kind of content streaming in education can only happen in the cloud. And what that means is we will have many, many more devices at the edge. Just imagine terminal devices in 3,500 primary healthcare clinics and community health centers. That is where we need to go. That is how we need to address this third level of the digital divide, to ensure the digital inclusion of South African citizens in primary health clinics in Lephalale, in schools in Lephalale. As we speak, we do have Wi-Fi networks in schools. Mostly they don't work well. The speed is not good enough for digital learning. And furthermore, we do not have the terminal devices that the end users can use. And if we miss out on the 5G network cloudification and the availability of devices to these very important young users in schools and in primary health clinics and community health centers, South Africa will miss the artificial intelligence revolution. Is that a good thing? Well, there are cyber risks, of course. We'll miss the cyber risks, but we'll also miss the cyber benefits. Or let me say, not miss out on. These are just a few of the advances. When I say we struggle to compete, that doesn't simply mean that we struggle to compete by selling our agricultural products or our manufactured products or our services in the global market. It also means that we are not evolving as a society, as a country, as cities, as metros, where drones are used in agriculture and in, let's say, building maintenance, where robotics is used in manufacturing, where emergency communications is highly advanced, where we have significant asset tracking in our airports, where we have live event streaming in our schools. So it's not simply a question of losing out in terms of selling something on a global market. We're also losing out in terms of the pace at which our cities, our schools, our universities, our manufacturing industries, our labor is evolving in a digital century. The National Digital and Future Skills Strategy, adopted by Cabinet in August 2020, we are now in the process of writing the implementation plan for that. And when one thinks about digital foundations, and here we're talking about the schools under the DBE, the environment for digital foundations requires a major transition in the schooling system. The current nature of a school as a physical space where people gather in classrooms, that is not the school of the future. That's not just because I think that, or other people think that. That's because there are real opportunities here to address challenges of learning weaknesses that we have not been able to address in the analog classroom. For example, really understanding maths. In fact, the DBE has a document about maths teaching where it focuses on creating understanding, real mathematics understanding. And we can't create that real maths understanding with a chalkboard or flip charts. It's impossible. We can only create that real maths understanding with dynamic software. And that means devices, good internet, etc. Similarly, in the TVET system, the technical and vocational education and training environment, this is where robotics specialists, visualization specialists, cybersecurity specialists will get their training. So that means a complete revision of the TVET system, and that TVET system, in the manner of how it trains, will need to be very practice oriented. So TVETs are going to need 5G networks to do all kinds of streaming, to do virtual training using virtual reality and augmented reality, where perhaps TVETs in Gauteng are working simultaneously with TVETs in Mpumalanga, or working simultaneously with TVETs in the Eastern Cape. What that means is that the policy and regulatory environment needs to have a very good understanding and a rapid and highly informed response from regulators in order to make the spectrum available that is needed for 5G. ICASA is working on this. It was required to respond to the 2019 Ministerial Policy Direction on High Demand Spectrum, and although we do not yet have sight of that work, but it was required to present that within a period of 6 months after the last World Radio Conference, which ended in December. So we should expect that this work, this response has been delivered to the minister, or is being delivered to the minister as we speak, and that it should shortly serve to this parliamentary committee as information. The department is required in terms of its APP to publish 5G policy, and it may publish a draft. It is likely to publish a draft in the final quarter of the year, the government year, between January and March 2020. This is just an excerpt from the Ministerial Policy Direction requiring ICASA to report to the minister on the spectrum requirements of 5G in bands lower than 6 gigahertz. That's this side of the spectrum diagram, and in the millimeter wave bands, which is this side of the diagram. I see we're perilously close to 12:15. I'm getting there. So just very quickly, I did speak about the SADC, and it's therefore very important to be familiar, to familiarize ourselves at parliamentary level as well with the SADC model laws and the CRASA regulatory guidelines. This is a list of recent CRASA regulatory guidelines on many issues on radio frequency spectrum, mobile broadband gap analysis, digital financial inclusion, universal access funding, and so on, rural broadband guidelines. So there is extensive information in the SADC environment that is very relevant to this parliamentary committee. For example, on cybersecurity and personal data protection, there is the African Union Convention on Cybercrime and Personal Data Protection of 2014. Only 14 African countries have signed, and only 8 African countries have ratified that AU convention, and we see that South Africa is not amongst them. Still talking about the pace of policy adoption and regulation. We did have the POPI Act in 2013, but the implementation date for all sections was only June 2020. So certain sections came into effect earlier, but the final sections only came into effect in June 2020. That is what I mean by the slow pace of adoption. Similarly, with the Cybercrimes Act, which has been approved both by this committee and by the Select Committee, we note that it is still awaiting signature, and that the cybersecurity matters which were removed from that Cybercrimes Act still need to be dealt with in additional legislation. So if we are relatively slow, we do not yet have all of this in place. This again suggests that the policy and regulatory environment, or rather policy, law, and regulatory environment for the digital economy, for this transition to the digital economy, still needs a lot of work. The POPI Act is really important because of the way in which it addresses the rights of data subjects, and I'm not sure when this committee will hear perhaps from the information regulator, as you have many reports, if you have recently heard or will soon hear from the information regulator on its progress, but its progress is vital foundation for the digital economy. And my second last slide, just to also note the SADC Parliamentary Forum discussion paper on the digital economy and society, which is being prepared by Research ICT Africa. It is not yet available publicly available, but it will shortly be available. And this again is where these key issues that we've just spoken about, data protection and privacy, cybersecurity and surveillance, cybercrimes, these are the foundations for effective and successful e-commerce and e-transactions. So this will be a major focus, should be a major focus for the PCC, the Select Committee, and many parliamentary committees in the coming year, 2021, and of course, future years. And finally, just to make a quick comment on the powers and functions of institutions, just as I indicated, suggested, recommended that there needs to be a full review, comprehensive review of regulation. There needs to be a comprehensive review of the powers and functions of institutions, including ICASA, to make an assessment whether, in fact, the regulators, as they are currently mandated in legislation, have the powers and functions required to progress, to advance their part, their contribution to the evolution of the digital economy. I thank you, Chair.
For now, we work with what we have. In terms of what we have.
Thank you, Lucy, for the presentation. If we can, so that we mute the mics.
A lot of work has been done, you know.
Okay, I'm sure you can still hear me.
Yes, yes, thank you, Chair. We're back in your hands.
All right. I will now use the remaining minutes for members to get into a conversation. I'm just making sure that these members who have raised their hands in the system actually are raising their hands. I see Honorable Faku, Honorable Mackenzie. Am I leaving anyone? Let's give those hands for now. Honorable Faku, followed by Honorable Mackenzie.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Prof. I think one must appreciate Prof every time she speaks. I think she instills new knowledge every time she speaks. I think let us appreciate the presentation from Prof. And I think Chair, Prof is raising a very important point. to say that if we want to achieve digital economy, we need to bring everyone on board so that everyone will understand what digital economy can bring to our country. You know, digital economy can create a lot of jobs. I think, Chair, maybe as a committee, we need to have a roundtable conversation as we normally have, especially with Treasury, Department of Small Business, DTI, Department of Trade and Industry. I think we need to have a conversation with them so that we put them on palm. I remember at some point I'm also serving in a committee of ICT group in Parliament. We once did an oversight to one of the main service providers, network service providers. You know, what I've experienced there is that how medication is monitored through the digital um, technology. I was so impressed. You can even look at a patient who has taken medication. The system tells you how many medications are left and when you need to order and all that. And that will help us in terms of service delivery. And Prof is also raising an issue of manufacturing, which I have a great passion with. And I think that as South Africa, if we can go that part, if you can look at Ethiopia, they are some of the fastest growing countries in the continent. It is because they are focusing on manufacturing. But I think these ideas that Prof is coming up with, I think we need to have that roundtable discussion so that we are able to assist our government. You know, even the issue that she's raising about digital technology when it comes to school in terms of mathematics. You know, as a country, it's a skill that we're really struggling in mathematics. You know, I also have a son who struggles to grasp things. And you know, the education system does not accommodate them. So I think the pointers that she has raised are very important points. But also, I think the point that she's raising about the review of regulators of their current mandate, do they have the manpower to do what they're supposed to do? And I think these are points that are very important that we need to absorb, and the department is here. And I think that it is not only DCDT that will make sure that we achieve digital economy. It will be a collective effort. But I think, Chair, it's important the department or the committee must have that roundtable discussion so that we make sure that everyone, especially, and I also hope that we will do this before the spectrum is auctioned, this discussion. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Faku. I'll now call Honorable Mackenzie. Please do indicate, members, if I'm leaving your hands because I can't see from here, but I did see Honorable Mackenzie. Honorable Mackenzie.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you, Professor Abrahams, not only for the insight we've gotten today, but the insight over the past 2 months. And thank you to you, Chair, and the committee secretariat for facilitating and arranging all of this. I think we all know that knowledge is the biggest commodity of all, and the manner in which it's been shared has been great. And I've certainly learned a lot, and I'm sure my colleagues have too. So a broad vote of thanks to you and your colleagues, Prof, including Professor Sutherland. Since last term, I agree with 100% what you say. You would think that telecommunications, and in fact, communication digital technologies, is the portfolio committee and the department that would almost be the foundation upon which every other department in this country should build their offering. And we should be the foundation for all of that. And I think the sooner government starts to get their head around that concept, the sooner government would be a much more efficient and effective organization. It's been my wish that we rename this department the Department of AA, Communications and Digital Technologies, because that'll put us right at the top of the list. Then just in terms of alternative manufacturing, I think it'd be great if we could have another session on that. I think perhaps with another portfolio as well. I think it's a tremendous initiative. In terms of those technologies, Prof, just a quick question. Do you include 3D modeling as part of those technologies? Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Mackenzie. May I just check if I'm leaving any member before the response? If not, over to you, Prof.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, honourable members, for those comments and questions, and particularly for the your very kind comments on the course, your experience of the course. We similarly benefited from the experience because we had participants from 8 SADC countries, from regulators, from industry, from national treasury. And I think that kind of participation made for a different and a very valuable conversation. On the question of additive manufacturing, 3D printing is definitely one of the tools, technologies, and approaches within the broader additive manufacturing envelope. And South Africa does have some, capacity, assets in terms of 3D printing, but it is not as extensive as it could be, in the sense that we are still, waiting for imports from Germany or from China, which take a long time to get here. And it may well be that those components, those parts that we're waiting for have been 3D printed in Germany or China, and then sent on a ship or a plane to South Africa, when in fact we could quite easily do that kind of 3D additive manufacturing ourselves. We will certainly be very willing to arrange a presentation on additive manufacturing in particular. Perhaps that is an agenda item for next year. And then my last comment, I think, again, in response to all the comments made, is that, and I did raise this with Mr. Maleka, who asked me to raise it now, namely that we would be very keen at no additional cost in terms of the current agreement to continue these sessions, these short sessions. They can be slightly shorter or slightly longer as time allows, during the course of 2021, choosing key topics such as the additive manufacturing topic, if that is the wish of the committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Prof. I think the committee would indeed welcome that, that we have these sessions going forward, but would also want, which is the matter we've also said, Mr. Malik, as the content advisor has been working on the program, needs to raise with you, that the issue of this course, I think for many of us as members, it's not merely a worry that we are not attending, and therefore the issue of fruitless expenditure would occur. But it's not really about money alone, but the thirst we have for knowledge as the committee, so that we understand the sector we are playing oversight on. And with the intense program of Parliament, we've not been able to attend as we would have wished, which is something we're able to do when we started with the course. That's something we think between yourself and Mr. Maleka would need to work on, even if it means maybe sacrificing some time in the evening.
Yes.
Just to make sure that we can still balance the two, that Parliament has invested in our capacity building, but more importantly, it is us who needs the capacity building program in order to make the committee effective. So I'm just saying that's something over and above seminars and roundtable discussions, but how we are able to get back to that program and catch up. And I'm sure if you are following discussions of the committee on various items, especially where we have gone through some of the lectures, it can only be better in the way committee members are able to engage on the matters before us. So I think that's something we would want you to live with, and maybe it's something you can come back to us on how we can manage that time. So I'm speaking for many of the members who would have commented to me on the side on how helpful the course would have been, and how this program now, intense program, would have been affected negatively as members in terms of attendance. And I'm sure you see the items, they're quite hot before the committee, and the committee has to unfortunately respond to that primarily, and then be able to still continue the capacity building. So if you would want to make a quick comment on that, so that we then close format.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think similarly to committee members and yourself raising the issue with Mr. Maleka, I also raised the issue with Mr. Maleka. So we are both concerned about the same thing. I take your guidance that we will discuss how we can find yet another way of doing what we did not do fully and completely. We did partially, but not fully and completely. So I'm happy to take that on board, and we will certainly come back to you. One question is whether there would be time or opportunity for one more session this year, and I'll consult on that. And we will then provide you with a program which perhaps better fits the time arrangements on your side.
Okay. All right. No, thanks, Prof. Honorable members, I think as we said, because of the House sitting, I really have to thank you for staying on until at this point. And I must say that it is always beneficial, especially the last session, Prof, because it's a program that talks to us without us having to make a decision on the spot, but help us to prepare even better for the future as we'll be dealing with different matters before us. More importantly, because when you talk to the digital economy, this has now become the priority of the country, whether you refer to what the minister would have said of finance last year on the recovery plan. The president has re-emphasized this point again in the reconstruction of the economy post-COVID. And we have to rise to the occasion as different players in the sector. We really appreciate it. Thanks, honorable members. Thanks, Lucy. And until we meet again, thank you.